bam, bam. And
I'm sure my mother was probably go on MSNBC tonight and said, my son, Jesse Waters, made a joke about Kamala Harris being manhandled by generals in the Situation Room, and he has desecrated the memory of our grandfather.
MAGA Fox News host Jesse Waters made a comment about Vice President Kamala Harris on live TV, which was so outrageous that not only did it offend two of his Trump-supporting co-hosts, but he publicly admitted that his own mother might call into MSNBC to publicly shame him. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. Alright friends, we hear a lot of salacious, ridiculous things coming from the Fox Propaganda Network and MAGA Fox News hosts, like Jesse Waters, right? But this one was a bit beyond the pale for even the likes of Jeanine Pirro and Dana Perino, two Republican Trump supporters who co-host The Five with Jesse Waters. I will say, regrettably, Jessica Tarlov, our favorite Fox News commentator, was not there. She would have certainly taken Waters to task for this, but this is what Jesse Waters happened to say about the Vice President of the United States.
This is where the president has his most impact. You have a lot of room to maneuver there as commander-in-chief. We don't know who she is. We don't know what she believes. She's going to get paralyzed in the Situation Room while the generals have their way with her. Right now,
Jesse Waters.
Jesse, I don't like that.
Figuratively,
Take
again,
it back.
have their way with her, control her, not in a sexual way. You're now.
So again, a comment which was so off-putting that Jeanine Pirro, who despises Kamala Harris, and Dana Perino were so outraged enough that they felt the need to scold him on air. And Jeanine Pirro even said, you need to retract it, take it back. So these are, sort of weird comments, misogynistic comments, sexualized comments about the vice president, which aren't entirely outside the realm of MAGA Republicans. Like, this isn't the first time we've heard stuff like this, but it is weird to hear it from such a prominent media figure like Jesse Waters. And again, just to show you that even he recognized that it was a bridge too far. Of course, he's much too prideful and partisan to ever retract or make an apology. He even made an admission involving his own mother.
That would be great. Like your sister does something and you're like speaking on behalf of the Waters family. I'm sure my mother was probably go on MSNBC tonight and said, my son, Jesse Waters, made a joke about Kamala Harris being manhandled by generals in the Situation Room, and he has desecrated the memory of our grandfather, and it's disgusting. I could see my mom doing that, and I wish I had a political dynasty so I could take shots as well.
So again, we talked about this in previous videos, but Jesse Waters' mother is actually a Biden supporting Harris, supporting Democrat. She loves her son, clearly unconditionally. That's an unconditional mother's love there. And she's actually, when Tucker Carlson left Fox News, or was fired from Fox News, and Jesse Waters effectively became his heir apparent, she actually phoned into his show and wished him well, while also scolding him for his dishonesty and bias. It was actually kind of a touching moment, seeing a mother's love for her son, even though that son is Jesse Waters. But again, a pretty despicable comment. The vice president has been an attorney. She was a district attorney. She was the attorney general, the top law enforcement officer in the biggest state in the country. California being the 5th or 6th biggest country in terms of nominal GDP, right? I mean, even though it's an American state, it has a greater GDP and population than most countries, right? So it's an incredibly important, powerful job being the top cop in a state like that. In these settings, she was a United States Senator for California for years, and she is now the second in command of the executive branch. This is a professional woman who has worked in very powerful adversarial settings against very powerful adversarial men, and she has commanded the loyalty of very powerful men in these various roles. But Jesse Waters wants you to believe that she's so weak and so timid and so out of her depth that she would be easy prey to the military. Again, she's the vice president. Now she sits in the Situation Room with President Biden. She's attending cabinet meetings. She has met military commanders. She has conversed and debated and received briefings from intelligence officers. She has worked with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff when advising the president. So by what basis does Jesse Waters have? Even if we take the comment, or rather his explanation for the comment, oh, I wasn't meaning anything sexual there. I wasn't making any sort of like off-color remark. I was just suggesting that she would be too timid to withstand the scrutiny, veteran military officers. What evidence does he have for that? He has none. He has none, right? And there's plenty of evidence to the contrary. But again, I think it says something that his comments were so off-putting that it offended the sensibilities of people who do not seem like they would otherwise be offended about comments made by Democrats. And interesting too, you have this contest. You have Jesse Waters there, and Jessica Tarlov was not president at the time, but Jessica Tarlov actually received some kudos from an unlikely source. Not just Bill Maher, but Quentin Tarantino, famous director, director of Reservoir Dogs and Django, and Chained and Glorious Bastards and True Romance. I mean, just a legendary director, obviously has liberal political instincts, but he was interviewed recently by Bill Maher. On Bill Maher's podcast, I was kind of surprised.
Fox does hire Jessica Tarlov. And they put her on their big show. And she says what she says against the Fox audience, against the panel, and especially against Janine Pereiro. All right. Monday through fucking Friday.
Yep.
As far as I can see, that is the hardest job on television. All right. And also they kind of like, maybe not Janine, but they all kind of like her. So they don't go ballistic on her. All right. They keep it respectful. And so here's the thing. One, she's kind of amazing. And I think it's one of the hardest jobs that there is out there. But two,
precisely, that's what we say here. Jessica Tarlov has the hardest job in legacy media. And on TV now, I disagree with this idea that they keep it pretty respectful. That they are sometimes very, very often, they heckle her. They throw peanuts from the peanut gallery. They constantly interrupt and disrupt. They crack jokes and they use the greater number advantage, right? CU, it's just her up against the 4 of the 5. They use that to their advantage. When they know they're outmatched on the facts, that's not particularly respectful. But I think overall, they're more courteous with her than they would probably be inclined to be with someone of her opinions, not to grade them on a curve here. I just love the fact that people recognize the brilliance of somebody like Jessica Tarlov, like Marie Harf. And listen, people talk, well, Fox does that. But what about MSNBC and what about CNN and Quentin Tarantino and others? They've complained about this, like there are no real Trump supporters on MSNBC or on NBC or on CNN. Well, CNN does have Scott Jennings and other conservative commentators. R. McDaniel, the former chairwoman of the Republican National Convention, was hired to be an NBC correspondent. And she was fired. But the thing is, she wasn't fired because she was a Trump supporter per se. She was fired because, she signal boosted the 2020 election lies. And this is the thing, I don't give Fox that much credit for employing somebody like Jessica Tarlov or Neil Cavuto, keeping them on payroll. Jon Stewart observed a decade ago, and actually no, almost 15 years ago in a conversation with Chris Wallace, who was employed by Fox at the time. He says, you're a really good journalist, and he is Chris Wallace now, words of CNN incidentally, but he's like, you are being brilliantly used by Roger Ailes and Albert Murdoch as a way to establish Fox's credibility where it might not otherwise have any. So I'm a big fan of Jessica Tarlov, but I also recognize that Fox employs her in part because they want to use her for credibility. Say we have such a powerhouse liberal here, but note how of the 5, there's only one dedicated liberal. You see how cunning they are about it. It's not the 4, right? They don't have 2 liberals, 2 conservatives. They basically do to Jessica Tarlov what Piers Morgan does when he has one of his panels about Donald Trump. I don't give Piers Morgan a lot of credit for occasionally having Destiny and Mehdi Hassan and Waja Alan. It's great that he does, but know how. He almost always stacks the deck against them for every one. Trump critic, you have 2 to 3 Trump supporters, usually with Piers Morgan jumping off the tight rope or the high rope with a chair, right? It's always this 3v1, 4v1 situation. So unfortunately for Fox, Jessica is so damn good that even though they cherry pick the topics, even though she's outnumbered 4-1, she does such an amazing job, and it's great that she's getting that recognition. But I don't think it imbues Fox with credibility, which overcomes its credibility issues, and certainly not when you compare her to somebody like Jesse Waters. Your Jesse Waters is, making these comments about the sitting vice president of the United States in a way that you would never hear an MSNBC host say about a Republican. As a matter of fact, if such a thing were to ever occur, they'd probably be fired for it, right? Jesse Waters is not going to be fired at all, might even get a raise as a consequence of this. But anyway, I think it's really interesting. I think it's interesting that Jessica Tarlov is getting much love, much deserved love from corners that I don't necessarily expect, which is Hollywood weighing in on this. And I also think it's really gross that Jesse Watt said what he said. And also interesting that he acknowledged that what he said was so out of pocket that his own mother might be inclined to call into MSNBC to publicly shame him. And let's hope she does, because that would make for great content in the meantime. Let me know what you think in the comments.